Well, hi everyone. Thanks for coming in today. I'm Lee, and today's episode is going to be on what does the Bible think about mobile phones. Is that right?
Yeah, what does the Bible say about smartphones?
What does the Bible say about smartphones? And we've got Matt here, and he's going to help us look into that and see if God or the Bible has anything to say about communication and smartphones and social media.
Thank you very much, Lee, and hello everybody. Now, most people would say, in answer to the question about what does the Bible have to say about smartphones, I think most people, Lee, would answer absolutely nothing. It's not as though there's an 11th commandment where God says thou shalt not text beyond 12 midnight when you're married or anything like that. There's nothing really in the Bible that guides us in the use of smartphones specifically.
Yeah.
But the Bible does prioritize communication and different forms of communication. And of course, I think something we would all agree on is the mobile phone. The smartphone is probably one of the ultimate forms of communication that has been invented. That's enabled us to pretty much do anything, anywhere, at any time, to use a common marketing thing that they use.
And to connect to heaps of other people. So, you know,
globally.
That's the whole thing with mobile phones and Facebook and Instagram, is that we now have a world where supposedly we're connected.
Exactly.
But I have a feeling, and this is just my opinion, that people have, even though they are connected in many different forms through social media, there's something deep down inside, and even though they have 1,000 friends, they feel disconnected.
I think you're absolutely right, and if you Google that, if you look up the research that's been done on that, people are more connected than ever before, but feeling mental illness is exploding all around the world. So there's something about the quality of the connectivity. There's something about the way people are communicating which is not meeting the basic needs of what communication should meet. It doesn't feel meaningful. It doesn't feel as though they're conducting a proper relationship with the entity that they call their friend. And so we're living in an era where a lot of ideas are being turned on its head. I mean, once upon a time, the idea of friend meant someone that you'd spent time with.
And actually listen to and talk to face to face.
Exactly, a face-to-face connection where you said, I like you, let's be friends.
Yeah.
Now it is somebody you come across online that you like the look of their picture, or they might say, can you be my friend? And you go, meh, and you click a button. And we are now friends. But of course, we're not friends. You don't necessarily know anything about that person beyond the very happy exterior that they reveal on
That's it,
Facebook.
all the best bits.
That's right.
Which you start to get jealous about, and you think, why am I on this thing anyway? And why is, my life's obviously very dull compared to that person.
Absolutely. One thing you should watch, Lee, and everybody, is maybe we're going to include a link to this.
Yeah, sure.
There's a guy that was right back in the early days of Facebook, and he does seminars now around different universities, community groups. And he raised the alarm. He said, we are building addiction and we are building anxiety into our software.
Yeah.
And I don't feel comfortable about this.
But that's the whole model though, isn't it?
That's what he was told. He was told, that's the model. That's exactly what we want. We want people to feel that the more time they spend, the more their needs are going to be met. We want to actually create an addiction to our technology, so people will orientate their whole lives around it. And there was a certain point at which he said, enough.
Yeah.
And he got out. And now he gives seminars around the place, basically telling people about this and warning them and saying, look, get out, have real friends, not electronic friends, not thumbs up friends. Actually have real friends.
Yeah, so it's almost a thing with advertising as well, isn't it? That it's based on fear. So you buy more things. You see that with TV ads. You see people feel disconnected even from the earth, just not from other people. They want to be out there doing stuff, and they see the four-wheel drive, Hilux, whatever, deluxe, and it's driving through the puddles, it's going up the big mountains. It's like, mate, if you buy one of these things, you can connect back to the earth and all your family be happy and you jump up in the air at the end of the ad. And you're connected with your family and also the earth.
Yep.
But then people buy these things and they drive around the city and they wonder why they're still not,
Right.
and that's how it works, isn't it? The whole fear.
Absolutely. Well, they've known for a long time that advertising used to be about our product will whiten whites better, and they would show a sample and they would talk about features and benefits of the product. Locked down to the product, so we give better mileage, we give better fuel economy, we will last longer between services. And it was very much, advertising was based upon the product features. Now it's based upon a dream, an idea, a scenario that you superimpose yourself into, and then of course you feel like that product is your link to that particular thing. And as you said, Lee, it's all about insecurities, wants, desires. And that's what advertising is today. It's designed to make you more insecure about who you are, jealous of other people, jealous of those that have things, and then of course you end up on this treadmill where you have to keep buying to feed that addiction.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Because they almost want you to be by yourself.
That's right.
They don't want you to connect. That's the funny thing. You know, they want you to have higher fences, be in a little apartment, don't connect with all these other people, because they know that if you connect with all these people, you don't need all that crap.
Well, what do they call the high fence now, which I think is classic?
Oh, the good neighbour.
The good neighbour fence. Yeah. You know, and again, once upon a time, not too long ago actually, when I was a kid, you could walk out your front, your back garden. All the fences were chest high.
Yeah. Yep.
So I could see the neighbour who was mowing his lawn five houses away.
And you have a wave and whatever.
And you would make eye contact, and you might have a little wave, an acknowledgement of there's another human being in my neighbourhood, and I know that person.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't a strange thing when my neighbour would send her kids round to my mum's place and say, can we have a cup of sugar? Because we knew the kids, we could see them playing, they could see us playing. We'd throw our balls at them, they'd throw their balls at us. Yeah. And so we knew one another. It was a part of a community in a neighbourhood, whereas now there's super high fences and we're all good neighbours because we've isolated ourselves and we're all in one box. And so the idea of community has been transposed now to this online unreal situation, which is not meeting people's basic fundamental needs.
And going back to mobile phones, it's even gotten to, there's a generation, maybe the generation's a bit older than you, are used to calling people. But if someone calls me, I ignore it. So, it's almost like, how dare they call me? Why don't they text me first?
That's right.
And see if I'm busy, or see if I want to call, And I use texting and, or Facebook Messenger or whatever a lot more than I would picking, because I'm sort of scared to connect with someone or something. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, this is where I think people have to ask themselves, why do they prefer remote communication to verbal communication? Why is that? Why do I feel like I prefer a text to actually talking to someone? And I confronted myself about this because I'm not that old just yet. And I used to text a lot. And now I will try to pick up the phone more, because when it came down to it, there's a certain awkwardness about communicating verbally. You've got to ask someone about themselves and the weather and what have you been doing today. Now that's just frivolous. I want to get to the point. And then there's the ending. How many mobile phone conversations have you had where they say bye at the same time you say bye, then they stop, then you stop, then you both say bye again, and then you just press the button and say go away. It's just too difficult. Goodbye. And there's a certain social pressure. There's a certain tension with verbal communication, which when you're sending a text, you just blurt out what you want, you hit send, and they've got that message.
That's it. And then they can reply to that whenever they want or whatever.
For me, when I confronted myself and I said, why do I prefer this? It came down to, yes, it was just awkwardness, fear and tension. I preferred remote. I preferred the easier option.
It's an easy option.
That's right. And yet, it seems the way God has designed people is that we get the most benefit and the most satisfaction out of our relationships when we overcome that fear of awkwardness and we actually engage and we talk.
It's like an energy, a transfer of energy, and there's someone said, I don't know what the statistics are, but a lot of communications, a lot with eyes, and language is more about moving hands and eyes and facial expressions. In a text, you don't know if the person's laughing at you, sad for you, having a go at you, is angry. You know, I've had text before or an email, and I thought, man, that person is really arrogant. And I thought, how can you pick that up in an email? You know, and then when I talked to them, they were like, oh no, I said that in the nicest way possible.
Well, this is where the whole emoticons thing has come about, where they've invented smiley faces, sad faces, laugh faces with tears on it, so that you can attempt to communicate what is lost when you're not there talking face to face. And I used to work in a dispute resolution body, and there was colleagues of mine who would only write with email. And the amount of misunderstandings that they would have with that person, because there's already a tense environment, someone's not happy with your company, and you didn't write things in a certain way. And of course, it's not professional to use emoticons in professional communication, and you are open for misinterpretation. Whereas you pick up the phone, you say something, it's interpreted wrong. No, I didn't mean that. I apologise if you understood that way. What I actually meant was, and immediately you cleared up that misinterpretation of what would take 2 or 3 exchanges in an email to get to the bottom of that offence. You've just raised the tension unnecessarily. And of course, when you're face to face, you can tell that that person's maybe just a dry communicator. They're not being offensive. They're not angry. They're just blunt and to the point. And their eyes aren't hostile. There's no tension in their bodies. And so God's made us in a way that when we engage in those sorts of, that kind of communication, we seem to get the most reward. We seem to get the most benefit. We feel like we've conducted a meaningful relationship as opposed to the remote varieties.
Yeah, well, and going back to those, what are they, emoticons?
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny because even the abbreviations, like LOL, like my auntie thought that was lots of love. You know, and so, so then it'd be like, oh, by the way, such and such passed away in a sleep last night, lol, LOL. And I'm like, why are you laughing about that? You know, so it's like, you do realise it's not lots of love, it's laugh out loud.
That's right.
In terms of, I remember you talked to me about before, there was some sort of offerings or something like that was done in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to move on to that or not, but...
Well, I guess it comes back to what we said earlier, that while the Bible does not say, thou shalt not text more than 10 times a day, or thou shalt not use Facebook for more than 2 hours a week, whatever, there's nothing in the Bible about those sorts of things.
Yeah.
You know, thou shalt not tweet.
Yeah, that's right.
The Bible does speak consistently and clearly about the way communication was prioritized. In the Bible, there is various emphasis placed upon different kinds of communication.
Yeah.
And one thing we were chatting about last week was the peace offering.
Yes, the peace offering, yeah.
Now, in the Old Testament, it was a very agricultural society, so people would, when they had their new lambs or they had their crops, they would dedicate the first round to God, to thank God for the rain, the sun that made everything possible. And of course, when there was a misdemeanor, obviously there was a sacrifice required. And so the priorities of the offerings were very much following baptism principles, that when you committed a trespass, a sin or a wrongdoing, you offered up an offering. And part of that offering was obviously admitting you'd done the wrong thing, but also, and most critical,
it's thanks to God or
promising to do the right thing, trying to make amends, trying to turn your life around. Then there was a burnt offering. Now the burnt offering had elements of obviously confessing sins, but the emphasis of the burnt offering was on that dedication. The whole animal was offered. And then finally, once you've confessed through the sin offering, you've rededicated your life, you've tried to get back on track with God and your neighbour, then there was a peace offering.
Is the peace offering better translated fellowship offering? Very much so. Yeah, because peace almost sounds like you're doing that whole thing again, like you've done something wrong, so you buy your wife flowers, and right. Where it's not actually doesn't really mean that, the peace offering, does it?
No, it's fellowship, which of course is only possible when there's no conflict, when there's no dispute, when there's no issue.
Yeah.
And so again, the two elements are represented. An animal died, that's the confession. Parts of the animal were offered on the altar and dedicated. So there's each offering had confession, rededication, each one. And baptism's the same. Baptism teaches us that you go down, you put off your old way of life, you come up, you live a resurrected life. So God teaches these principles consistently, Old and New Testament. And so, but with the peace offering,
Yep.
the priest as God's representative and you as the offerer sat down and you had a barbecue, basically. You enjoyed that offering, and part of that offering you had bread and wine as well.
Yeah, right.
And that's all listed in Leviticus, the different offerings and what was enjoyed and part of those offerings.
Yeah. So I thought also, and I could be wrong here, you might know this, but I think any time that they wanted to sacrifice or spill blood of an animal, they had to sacrifice the peace offering to God first. Like, as in, I don't know if they could eat meat without doing that peace offering. Is that right, or?
I'm not absolutely certain.
Okay, right.
We'll have to, there's homework for everybody and homework for me. We're going to have to look at that. But look, definitely in the festivals, the predominance was on the burnt offering,
Yeah.
which was dedication.
Yeah.
Dedication, of course, for all the people, and also peace offerings,
Yeah.
fellowship with God.
Yeah.
And they were the two things that were celebrated in their festivals. And of course, part of that was they ate. They enjoyed a meal with God, if you like. God's
So they had
representative.
fellowship, like they were connecting with God and with the priests, and
Exactly.
yeah.
And so when you think about it, that was the highest form of worship. It was basically the climax of your role towards God. And of course, what everyone looked forwards to ultimately is fellowship with God.
Yeah.
And the Bible talks about a time in the future when Jesus has reigned on the earth and we will all share fellowship with God. So look, in the Old Testament, the peace offering was considered the highest, most important offering in that sense, because that's where
You connect back to
you
God.
connect with God.
And God doesn't need the sacrifice, though, does
right.
he?
No.
It's really for you to to connect with God.
And that's a mistake a lot of cultures have made. We're doing this to placate an angry God, whereas it was never about that. It was like, well, you put time and effort into that animal or that crop. God's enabled that to happen. You've now done something wrong. That's something you have to do. There's a part of you that is offered.
It's for you. It's not for God.
right.
God doesn't need. You don't need to calm God's anger. It's for you to reconcile. To connect with God.
And critical to all those offerings, there was the hand on the head, and that was the process of identification. That was where what I have done, I identify with that animal.
Yeah.
And of course, you read Romans 6 about baptism, and it's the language of identifying. We identify with Jesus' death by putting to death our natural desires. We identify with his resurrection by living a resurrected life. And so back in the Old Testament, you put your hand on that animal to identify. It was part of you, it was an extension of who you were. It was your time, your energy, your labor went into that animal. So of course, what the Bible shows very clearly is that as a form of communication, right, the best form of communication is face-to-face.
Face-to-face. Yeah.
Showing hospitality.
Sharing a meal.
And
sharing a meal, yeah.
And so you look at Abraham, when he entertained those three angels, he ran around like a crazy thing, killing the fatted calf, getting the cakes all ready, and they served that up and they took that role very seriously. So the Bible prioritizes face-to-face sharing the meal as the highest level of communication a human can achieve between two human beings, and also between God and human beings as well. And of course, in Revelation, it talks about when Jesus comes back to the earth, there'll be a marriage supper of the Lamb.
Marriage supper, yeah.
There's food, there's fellowship, there is a coming together of two parties that were separate.
Well, hi guys. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of what God or what the Bible says about smartphones. There's parts 2 and 3 to come. If you look in the description below, I'll have a link to the next part if you're interested to keep watching and to learn more about what God thinks about mobile phones or smartphones and social media. And if you're interested in getting more videos like this, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click that little bell or wherever it is that you do. And so you can keep in touch and get a reminder anytime that we send out a new video. God bless, and we'll see you soon.